At the small cafe, A Morning Glory, in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, the busy morning rush was beginning. Emily Harrison worked without stopping, remembering regular customers' orders and serving coffee with a warm smile. Her face showed the fatigue from the 2 years since losing her husband, but she still lived each day desperately for her son's sake. "Mom, my lunchbox." 7-year-old Ryan came running over in a panic. Emily quickly pulled her son's handmade lunch from her apron pocket and patted his head. Ryan was an adorable boy who resembled his father Michael, with big brown eyes and a friendly smile. Since Michael's sudden death in a car accident, Ryan had been Emily's support and at the same time, a treasure she had to protect. "Be a good boy at school today," Emily kissed her son and walked him to the corner where the school bus would arrive. When her son's small wave disappeared from view, she let out a deep sigh. Life since losing her husband had never been easy. The cafe income alone made household finances tight, and she also worked nights doing data entry from home. When she returned to the cafe, her cell phone was ringing. The screen displayed "Mom." Emily mentally prepared herself before answering. "Emily, are you still working at that shabby little cafe?" Margaret Taylor's voice carried its usual critical tone. Margaret was known as a woman with influence in local society, but she had no hesitation in treating her daughter Emily as the family shame. "Good morning, Mother." "Yes, I'm still working here," Emily answered with a tired voice. "I'm busy with Jessica's wedding preparations, and now I have to worry about you too." Margaret's voice contained obvious irritation. "That girl is marrying such a wonderful man. Richard Winston is a vice president at an investment bank with a 6-figure annual salary." Emily's chest tightened. Her sister Jessica was certainly beautiful and attractive. But at the same time, she had always sought to be the center of attention since childhood and wouldn't hesitate to use Emily as a stepping stone. "That's wonderful," Emily said, words she didn't mean. "But I'm worried about you. You'll naturally attend the wedding, but don't come looking shabby. All the relatives will be there. At least wear something decent, and make sure Ryan is properly dressed too." Emily bit her lip. Her mother's words pierced her heart like sharp knives. She wanted to attend her sister's wedding properly dressed with her son too. But reality was harsh. Medical bills and funeral costs for Michael had depleted their savings, and she was barely managing monthly living expenses. "I understand. And at the reception, try not to draw attention to yourself. If someone in your position stands out, it would embarrass Jessica on her special day." After the call ended, Emily gripped the counter with trembling hands. When her husband Michael was alive, she hadn't received this kind of treatment from family. Michael worked as a site supervisor at a local construction company, and while they weren't wealthy, he truly loved Emily and their son, and they lived with pride as a family. Since he was gone, Emily had been constantly exposed to cold looks and words from her mother and sister. When it was time for Ryan to come home from school, Emily regained some energy seeing her son's smile. He happily talked about what happened at school and did his homework on Emily's lap. After putting her son to bed that night, Emily opened an old photo album. There were photos from her wedding with Michael, the day Ryan was born, and records of happy days the three of them spent together. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Those times had certainly been happy. But reality mercilessly confronted her with trials. At Jessica's wedding next weekend, she would face a mixture of pity and contempt from relatives' gazes. Still, Emily had to be strong for her son. She wanted to show Ryan that his mother lived with pride. Even if the whole world looked down on her, at least her son loved and believed in her. On Saturday morning, 1 week before Jessica's wedding, Emily went to the local department store with her son Ryan. Following her mother's harsh demands, they both needed to get appropriate attire for the wedding. However, Emily's wallet was far from abundant. "Mom, I want to wear a cool suit like Dad's," Ryan said while looking at a small suit in the children's section. Emily's heart ached. Looking at the price tag on the suit her son wanted, it read $200. That was equivalent to her weekly income. Let's look around a bit more. Emily took her son's hand and headed to the sales section. Fortunately, she found a navy suit marked down to half price. The size was perfect for her son, and Ryan liked it too. Choosing her own clothes was more difficult. Emily hadn't bought new clothes in years. She still had the black dress she wore when Michael was alive, but that was what she wore to his funeral. She couldn't wear that dress to a wedding. A store clerk kindly recommended an inexpensive dress. It was a knee-length dress in deep green with a simple but elegant design. In the fitting room, Emily looked in the mirror and was a bit surprised to see herself looking feminine for the first time in a while. "Mom, you look very beautiful," Ryan said, peeking through the gap in the fitting room curtain. Emily was moved to tears by her son's pure words. For these 2 years, she had been so caught up in making a living that she hadn't had the luxury of caring about her appearance. But for her son's sake, and for her own pride, she wanted to be beautiful for at least this one day. The night before the wedding, Emily stayed up late fixing her hair and doing her best with the makeup she had. The next morning, Ryan also put on his new suit and had his hair neatly combed. The two stood side by side in front of the mirror. "If Dad were here, what would he think seeing us?" Ryan whispered softly. Emily hugged her son. "I think Dad would be proud of us." The wedding venue was the luxury Hotel Grand Regency in downtown Columbus. When Emily and her son got out of the taxi, they saw an entrance decorated with elaborate ornaments. The venue, decorated with white roses and gold ribbons, already had many guests gathered. Emily. Turning around, Aunt Patricia approached. Patricia was her mother's sister who always kindly looked after Emily. "What a lovely dress. Ryan looks very handsome too," Patricia welcomed them warmly. However, other relatives' reactions were cold. When Emily approached to greet them, her cousin Sarah clearly showed signs of avoiding her. "Oh, Emily. Are you still working at that cafe?" another aunt, Carol, said in a condescending tone. "Ryan's 7 now, right? Isn't school tuition difficult?" Emily answered while maintaining a smile, "Yes, but we're managing somehow." "Oh yes, I heard from Jessica that Michael's insurance payout wasn't much in the end," Carol said in a lowered voice. "Young men's insurance premiums are low after all." Emily's cheeks burned. It was humiliating that the family's financial situation had become a topic of conversation among relatives. Ryan seemed to sense his mother's tension and squeezed Emily's hand tightly. When the ceremony began, Emily sat in the back of the venue. Jessica was certainly a beautiful bride. Seeing her sister wrapped in a pure white dress and smiling happily, Emily felt complex emotions. Feelings of genuinely wishing for her sister's happiness mixed with sadness for what she herself had lost. The groom Richard was a tall man with refined features. He had a sophisticated aura befitting his title as vice president of an investment bank. Watching the two exchange vows, Emily remembered her own wedding with Michael. Had they been this happy back then too? When the reception began, Emily was called by her mother. "Emily, you and Ryan sit at that corner table," Margaret pointed to the least conspicuous spot in the venue. "The area near the main table is for Richard's family and important guests." Emily nodded silently. When she sat at the designated seat with Ryan, they were surrounded by people they didn't know. They all seemed to be work colleagues of the bride and groom and showed no interest in Emily and Ryan. When the bride and groom's entrance began, the venue was filled with applause. Jessica walked proudly arm in arm. When it was time for speeches, the groom's father, the bride's father, and a friend representative took turns at the microphone. "Now, we have prepared special entertainment," Jessica stood up with the microphone. Emily had a bad feeling. She felt her sister's eyes turning toward her. "Everyone, thank you for coming to our wedding today," Jessica's voice echoed through the venue. "Since today is a special day, we've prepared some unusual entertainment." The lights dimmed and a single spotlight began illuminating the venue. Emily's heart pounded violently. The spotlight moved slowly through the venue as if searching for prey. "It's auction time tonight," Jessica said with a laugh. Emily tried to stand up, but it was already too late. In the blinding spotlight that illuminated Emily and Ryan, Jessica's voice rang throughout the venue. Everyone, here are my wonderful sister Emily and her son Ryan. Jessica held the microphone in one hand and gracefully pointed at them with the other. Currently a single mother working hard at a local cafe. Curious gazes were directed from the audience. Emily tried to smile while holding her son's shoulder, but her cheek muscles were trembling. Ryan clung to his mother's lap, confused by the sudden attention. And this cute son is 7-year-old Ryan, Jessica continued in a sweet voice. His father passed away 2 years ago, and now he's doing his best in a household without a father figure. Emily's chest constricted. Her sister was talking about her husband's death as if it were part of a show. The people in the venue wore expressions of sympathy, but curiosity and superiority were clearly mixed in. Actually everyone, today I'd like to hold a special charity auction, Jessica raised her voice. The venue buzzed. This lovely parent and child, my sister Emily and nephew Ryan, are currently in a very difficult situation. Emily tried to stand up, but couldn't move due to the spotlight's glare and surrounding gazes. Her heart pounded violently and cold sweat ran down her back. Living on cafe income alone is difficult, and they're struggling with their son's education expenses. Jessica made a theatrically sad expression. So everyone, would anyone like to become a sponsor for this poor single mother and her son? Small laughter began leaking from the audience. At first it was confused laughter, but gradually it turned into ridicule. Richard's work colleagues were nudging each other with their elbows while whispering. In other words, we're looking for someone to sponsor this adorable set, Jessica continued with a laugh. A single mother and her poor son. Would anyone like to bid on this lovely set? The venue erupted in laughter. Some men slapped each other's shoulders laughing, and elderly women covered their mouths while giggling. Emily trembled with humiliation. Her son didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could tell the adults around them were laughing at them. Jessica, stop, Emily whispered, but her voice was drowned out by her sister's amplified voice. So, how about some bids? This parent and child really needs support. Jessica looked around the venue. Current monthly income is probably around $1,200. I hear rent payments are often late too. Emily's face turned bright red. Having her family's shameful details exposed was humiliating beyond words. But what hurt most was that her son was witnessing this humiliating scene. From the back of the venue, her mother Margaret's voice rang out. Starting bid, $0. Margaret raised one hand high and shouted. Her face showed a satisfied expression of looking down on her daughter. Considering this parent and child's current market value, $0 seems like an appropriate price. The venue erupted in even greater laughter. Men clapped and laughed, women laughed until they cried. Even the groom Richard wore a wry smile. At that moment, Ryan started crying. Mom, what did we do? Why is everyone laughing? The 7-year-old son couldn't bear the cruel laughter of the adults and buried his face in Emily's chest, sobbing. His small body shook, and his hiccuping voice echoed through the venue. Her son's tears and sobs tore Emily's heart apart. Did Mom do something bad? Is it because I'm a bad boy? Ryan looked up at his mother with his face messy from tears. Emily hugged her son while fighting back tears. But she couldn't show tears in this place. For her son's sake too, she had to maintain her last shred of dignity. No, Ryan. You're a wonderful boy, Emily whispered in a trembling voice while stroking her son's hair. But the venue's laughter didn't stop. Jessica continued holding the microphone with satisfaction. So, would anyone like to bid? Starting from $0, Jessica called out again. This parent and child is really in need, so isn't there anyone kind enough? Emily tried to stand up holding her son. She couldn't expose her son to this humiliating situation any longer. But the spotlight continued to shine on them persistently. Oh, my sister is trying to escape, Jessica said with a laugh, But the auction isn't over yet. Voices saying, "Don't let them escape," and "It's not over yet," could be heard from the venue. It had become like a freak show atmosphere. Emily took her son's hand and tried to leave the scene somehow. But the surrounding tables got in the way, and she couldn't reach the exit immediately. "Everyone, really no one will bid?" Jessica said in an artificially sad voice. "If no one raises their hand, this parent and child will truly be worth $0. The venue was once again filled with laughter. Emily tried to head toward the exit pulling her son's hand, but then it happened. From the very back seat of the venue, one hand slowly rose. The venue's laughter suddenly stopped. All eyes turned to the owner of that hand. The spotlight also hurriedly changed direction and illuminated the back of the venue. There stood a middle-aged man in a black suit. His expression was serious, even angry. The surrounding people were confused by the sudden development, and murmuring covered the venue. The man slowly began walking forward. Only his footsteps echoed in the silence. Jessica held the microphone with a confused expression. $1 million. The man said in a low voice that resonated throughout the venue. The venue fell completely silent. Emily held her son Ryan close while staring at the man. He was a tall man dressed in a black suit. His face showed a complex expression mixing anger and sadness. Emily didn't recognize him, but somehow felt nostalgic and reassured. The man walked to the center of the venue and stopped in front of Jessica holding the microphone. "Excuse me, may I borrow the microphone?" The man's voice was low and dignified. Jessica handed over the microphone in confusion. Her face was pale, and her previously confident expression had completely disappeared. The man took the microphone and looked around the venue. Hundreds of gazes were fixed on him, but he was completely unfazed. "Ladies and gentlemen, nice to meet you. I am Daniel Harris," the man began introducing himself. "I serve as CEO of Harris Technologies." The venue buzzed. Harris Technologies was a famous major IT company nationwide. Everyone wondered why its founder and current CEO was here. "Watching that charade earlier, I simply couldn't remain silent." Daniel's voice was filled with anger. "Putting a price on this wonderful parent and child is the most shameful act as human beings." Emily's heart raced. Someone was trying to protect them. That alone was enough to bring tears to her eyes. "Emily Harrison," Daniel turned toward Emily. "You may not remember me, but I was a close friend of your late husband, Michael Harrison." Emily's heart pounded violently. Michael's close friend? Her husband had often talked about friends from his student days, but she couldn't clearly remember if Daniel's name was among them. "Michael and I were close friends since university, and I had the honor of attending his wedding," Daniel continued. "However, I moved to Silicon Valley for work afterward and we lost touch. I learned of his death 6 months after the accident." Daniel's voice trembled slightly. The venue's people listened with bated breath. Michael often talked about his family while he was alive. He was truly proud of his beloved wife Emily and son Ryan. Daniel looked at Emily. "He always said, 'If anything happens to me, please protect my family.'" Tears overflowed from Emily's eyes. She hadn't known Michael had said such things. "I came here to fulfill my promise to my dear friend." Daniel's voice became stronger. "I cannot overlook acts that insult this parent and child." Jessica stood frozen pale. The groom Richard also wore a confused expression. "Emily," Daniel addressed Emily through the microphone. "I owe you an apology. I should have contacted you immediately after Michael's death. But it's not too late even now." Daniel took an envelope from his suit's inner pocket. "Harris Technologies is currently looking for an excellent marketing director. The annual salary is $100,000, with complete health insurance and education benefits." Daniel held out the envelope toward Emily. "If you'd like, could you start working Monday?" The venue buzzed again. This time with voices of surprise and envy. An annual salary of $100,000 was more than 5 times Emily's current income. But I don't have the qualifications, Emily said in a trembling voice. I heard from Michael. You majored in business at university and achieved excellent grades in marketing, Daniel smiled gently. It's our responsibility to give talented people appropriate opportunities. Emily looked down at her son. Ryan looked up at his mother and nodded slightly. Thank you, Emily stood up and bowed deeply. I humbly accept. Applause arose from the venue. But this applause was completely different from the earlier ridicule, it was heartfelt congratulatory applause. Daniel returned the microphone to Jessica. Jessica received the microphone with trembling hands. Now then, sister of the bride, Daniel looked at Jessica. His eyes held a stern light. Your entertainment was very interesting. Jessica stood frozen, unable to say anything. At that moment, the groom Richard stood up. His face was red with anger. Jessica, what on earth is this? Richard's voice echoed through the venue. I didn't know you were such a cruel person. Richard, this was just a joke, Jessica frantically tried to make excuses. A joke? Richard shook his head. You call publicly insulting family a joke? Making a 7-year-old child cry is funny? The venue's people watched their exchange with bated breath. I didn't know you had such a side, Richard began removing his engagement ring. I cannot spend married life with such a person. Wait, Richard. Jessica desperately clung to his arm. But Richard coldly shook her off. The wedding is off, Richard placed the ring on the table. I don't want to be involved with such a family. Richard left the venue. His family and friends followed in confusion. An awkward silence fell over the venue. Daniel walked over to Emily and her son. Let me drive you home, Daniel said gently. Rest well today, and let's talk on Monday. Emily took her son's hand and stood up. They walked through the venue with dignity. There was no longer any need to hide. The surrounding gazes had changed from earlier contempt to respect. Before leaving the venue, Emily looked back. Jessica sat alone at a table, crying with ruined makeup. Her mother Margaret was surrounded by relatives, desperately trying to explain something. But the relatives' expressions were cold. Emily gripped her son's hand tightly and left the venue. Outside, the night breeze touched her cheek. The starry sky shone beautifully. Mom, is that man really Dad's friend? Ryan asked. Yes. Dad protected us, Emily hugged her son. In Daniel's luxury car, Emily gazed out the window. Today would become a turning point in her life. She was truly grateful that her husband Michael had thought of her and their son until the end, and that a true friend had kept his promise. 3 months passed, and one afternoon Emily was looking out the window from her new office. The marketing department of Harris Technologies on the 23rd floor of a high-rise building in downtown Columbus was a bright, open space. On Emily's desk were a picture her son Ryan had drawn and a photo of memories with her husband Michael. Emily, today's presentation was wonderful, her colleague Sarah called out. The client seemed very satisfied too. Emily smiled. The new workplace that had initially made her anxious had now become like a second home. Her colleagues welcomed her warmly and properly evaluated her abilities. The sense of fulfillment was incomparable to her days working at the cafe. At 5 o'clock, Emily went to pick up Ryan at his private school. Her son was truly enjoying his new school life. He had made many friends and participated in soccer team practice after school. Mom, I got 100 on my math test today. Ryan reported happily as soon as he got in the car. That's wonderful. Dad would be proud of you too, Emily patted her son's head. When they returned home, there was a letter in their new apartment's mailbox. Seeing the sender, Emily's expression clouded. It was from her mother Margaret. Opening the letter, she found words of apology. Since the wedding incident, criticism from relatives had been severe, and Margaret was completely isolated from local society. Jessica also couldn't recover from the shock of the broken engagement and remained shut in at her parents' house. However, Emily felt no desire for revenge. Rather, she wished for her family's happiness. She just knew it was impossible to return to their previous relationship. On the weekend, Daniel invited them to dinner. At his house, women who had also lost husbands and single father friends had gathered. Everyone had a barbecue together while the children played in the yard. "Emily, I'm really glad you came," Daniel said quietly. "I think Michael would be at peace too." "It's thanks to you, Daniel," Emily answered with heartfelt gratitude. "You gave my son and me a new life." "No, it's your own strength," Daniel shook his head. "I just provided the right opportunity." In the yard, Ryan was playing happily with other children. His smile was much brighter and more confident than before. Emily watched her son's growth while feeling deep satisfaction. That night, after putting Ryan to bed, Emily spoke to her husband's photograph. "Michael, your friend kept his promise. We're very happy now." Michael in the photograph smiled gently as always. Emily was certain her husband was watching over them from heaven. A few days later, she heard an interesting story from Daniel at the office. Jessica's former fiancé Richard was actually working in the same industry and had told colleagues about the wedding incident. "He said you two were a truly admirable parent and child," Daniel reported. Conversely, about his former fiancé's family, he said, "I'm really glad I didn't get involved with them." Emily felt complicated emotions. She couldn't bring herself to rejoice in her sister's fallen reputation. But she was happy that the truth was revealed and their honor was restored. One Sunday afternoon, Emily and Ryan were walking in the local park. There they happened to meet Aunt Patricia. "Emily, you look well," Patricia welcomed them warmly. "How's the new job?" "Very fulfilling," Emily answered. "Ryan likes his new school too." "That's good." "I'm truly sorry about that wedding incident," tears welled up in Patricia's eyes. "We should have stopped it." "That's in the past now," Emily squeezed her aunt's hand. "What matters is now and the future." As the sunset sank in the western sky, Emily walked home hand in hand with her son. From that humiliating night 3 months ago, her life had changed dramatically. But the most important change was regaining confidence in herself. After Ryan fell asleep, Emily opened her new planner to check tomorrow's schedule. Important meetings, her son's school events, dinner with friends. Busy but fulfilling days continued. The starry sky spread outside the window. Emily smiled quietly. True family wasn't just about blood relations. Connections with people who care for and support each other, that was what real family meant. Her husband Michael, friend Daniel, new workplace colleagues, and her son Ryan. Surrounded by this new family, Emily's new life was beginning.